Actually, the medicine's ethical models, they are getting the impact of the bioethics as the practical phenomenon. Later, at the further topics, at the further our discussion, we will see the practical structure of the analysis which will be implemented to the particular fields of understanding the medicine and the healthcare procedure. So let's see what kind of contemporary types of medicine ethical models can be implemented at the research level. The Beauchamp and Childress text is probably the authoritative work, and we will come to their vision once more. The authoritative part of the constructive of the principalism that which they have been implemented in their manuscript. It seems that most bioethical decisions are analyzed using the framework described there at that manuscript. The popular text, Clinical Ethics, a practical approach to ethical decisions in clinical medicines, employs the 4 principles of its practical approach. And here we will come to this description of such 4 principles which were implemented by Beauchamp and Childress. And of course, we will give you and we will discuss the way how one can implement these 4 principles into its practical description, into its practical research making in the field of bioethics. The first principle, the principle of respect for autonomy, can be stated as a negative obligation and as a positive obligation, both. At the law, at the legislative procedure, we have positive and negative human rights. And here, at the respect for autonomy of the personhood, we will see the interconnection between the negative and a positive obligation in the same nature, with the same vision, with the same construction of the personhood. As a negative obligation, autonomous actions should not be subjected to controlling constraints by others. This means it getting the strict borderline for the usage of the power, for the usage of the influence from the other personhood over the over the recipient of the information, recipient of the influence. As a positive obligation, this principle of respect for autonomy requires respectful treatment in the disclosed information and fostering autonomous decision making. Here, the autonomy itself will be resulted at the system of the decision making, not just particularly at the field of interconnection between patient and the physician, but also by those who are making bioethical research, because the decision making and the autonomous and the way how we will make the research, the way how the survey will be proceeded, that the result actually of this first principle, it's the result of the positive obligation of this principle of respect for autonomy. First, in order to be an autonomous choice, a patient's choice must be voluntary. Voluntarization, the voluntary decision, the understanding of the system of the voluntary decision, they all include to the description of the autonomous choice. And as you can see here, that's the positive description of the autonomous choice, because it's causing the changes of the social disposition of the person. This is another way of saying that it must be free of controlling constraints by others. Here we are getting the influential of the negative description of the such a principle, because the system of controlling, protecting from the controlling by the others of this procedure of the decision making of the person, it doesn't matter the patient or the doctor, is actually the negative approach to the understanding of such a principle. Secondly, a patient choice must be informed. The system of information, the system of changing the information society and interconnection between different recipients of such an information is important for the contemporary stage in the development of bioethics. Third thing which you're supposed to remember about autonomous choice, that's the patient's ability to decision making, the responsibility of such a decision making, and of course the changing of the decision with regard to remember such a thing as human dignity of other person. And here such a thing as ability to make a decision, such ability to change the social interconnection, that's resulted in the positive way of understanding ethical model. Second principle, the principle of non-maleficence, says that one ought not to inflict evil or harm, where harm is defined as an adverse effect on one's interests. Here, according to authors of the phenomena which we are talking about, Beauchamp and Childress, the principle of non-maleficence supports a number of more specific moral rules, which is coming to protect the humankind from the evil, to not inflict the harm in the nature of the human being, and specifically at the connection between the patient and the doctor. Harmful acts are generally prima facie. This means from the first point of view they are wrong, but will not but considered wrong if the harm is justifiable. This means the harm according to the certain legal procedure, according to the certain proceeding system, according to the certain ethical model which have been adopted by the society. Of course, society uses this vision of the harmful not in the general way. It depends on this particular situation. Harm is justifiable if there is a first just, lawful excuse or reason for this prima facie harmful, for the first glance, for the first view harmful. Act or omission. It's important for you to understand that such a thing as omission or act, they are getting introduced of the changing in social condition, changing in the social interrelations, and of course such a thing as the harmful decision. To make the harmful decision is important to the protecting of the social stability. The third principle, it's the principle of beneficence. Beauchamp and Childress means by that asserts the duty to help others further their important and legitimate interests. Here the beneficence coming to the supporting of the human rights, supporting of the human dignity, and of course in the case of bioethics, supporting actually the role of the patient first of all, because the patient, according to the Beauchamp and Childress, supposed to increase their influence to the medical service system. The authors, Beauchamp and Childress, distinguish between specific beneficence and general beneficence. Specific beneficence is obligatory beneficence. It refers to those positive obligations for example, like duties to act, we owe to others to further their importance and legitimate interests. And of course, here we are making the support for the social changes, support in the procedure of the legal or medical servant to protect the result, to protect actually the procedure itself. And we owe a duty of specific beneficence to those others with whom we are in some special relationship. Of course, such a relationship can be seen in the future. In the future, our topic we will can discuss the problem of palliative medicine. So that's one of the example of this specific beneficence related to the others, and it's formulated into the special types of relationships, special types of institution inside the medical service. General beneficence is directed beyond those special relationships to all persons, to all mankind. For the most part, general beneficence is ideal beneficence. That is, although moral ideals encourage us to act affirmatively so as to help others with whom we do not find ourselves in a special relationships. We are not obligated to do so by the moral rules, but in the general beneficence, for the ideal beneficence, we're supposed to follow the construction of such a special relationship. Finally, the fourth principle, the fourth vision of the ethical models by the authors, it's a formal justice. It's common to all theories of justice, starting, I guess, and not me, just attributed to the time of Aristotle, the polymath of the ancient Greek. It holds that justice requires that equals be treated equally, and unequals be treated unequally, but in proportion to their relevant inequalities. Of course, who will make such a decision? That's a special committee, that's a special institution inside the system of bioethics. It can be called bioethical committee. Of course, the principle of moral justice, that's one of the most important in the connection between bioethics and actually judicial procedure. The authors Béchamp and Childress concede that their four classes of principles do not constitute a general moral theory. Here, you're supposed to understand that their point of view is just the example, and just one of the model on the way how to make the bioethical decision influential and efficient. They, Béchamp and Childress, provide only a framework for identifying and reflecting on moral problems. The general list of the moral problems can increase and can influence the further development of the society. But itself, the framework which were done by these four classes will get to the implementation of the unity, get to the implementation of the stage of the goodness in the society, at the social realm. Most ethical frameworks found in literature are step-by-step plans that can be followed chronologically during moral case deliberation. We believe that frameworks that include a step-by-step plan are preferred by clinicians, as in our experience, clinicians are generally not well trained in medical ethics and find that the practical guidelines of a step-by-step planning more helpful than the discussion about general things, the discussion about the forms of theorizing. That's a tension between our theorizing part and the clinical part, clinicians. As they This means clinicians are already used to working with different consecutive steps in clinical practice. This means on the grassroots of including bioethics, including ethical models into their practice and into the practical as a practical phenomenon. There is a wide variety of the proposed step-by-step plans. As I have mentioned to you in Genesis of the philosophy, there were such things as Socratic vision. So some frameworks are composed of multiple steps with explicit phases that have to be completed by getting to the universal description of phenomenon of the medical treatment of the medical service. Other frameworks are less specific and give more general, vague directions for the changes of the model for the formation of the ethical model approach. I want to mention to you this question conclusion concerning the models itself. Bertram and Childress' four principles in its practical approach provide to us the vision, the construction for the research which is supposed to be done at the practical level. If you will come to someday, if you will come to the scientific paper, you will see that a lot of them, if you will analyze it, to make content analysis, you will see that Bertram and Childress' four principles is crucial for the phenomena for the research of bioethics. And here, step-by-step plan for clinicians is more preferable than to the person who represent bioethics community. Don't forget about that it's supposed to be a specialization within your research team, within your discussion team on the implementation of the law. And then finally, if you will work on the level of legislative procedure, don't forget that the clinics is more preferable to do step-by-step approach works.